we're just gone a little minute. So next up is a very interesting panel about publishers and developers, and it's about maintaining development cost while meeting the growing expectations of consumers. That was a long one. So I would like to welcome Emma Farrow, Chief Publishing Officer, Avalanche Studios Group, Fatima Demina, Business Development Manager, Devoted Studios. Come on, guys. Carlos Estigarribia, Head of Business Development, Coco. Rima Al-Sheikh, I hope I pronounced that right, Founder and CEO at Begin AI. Fabienne Leine, Senior BD Manager at Xbox. And it's been moderated by a dear friend of Nordic the past many years, Jeff Hilbert, founder, Starting Point Games. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Hello. Hey, everyone. Before we start, and I'll do all the introductions in a second, how many people in here are publishers? Oh, okay. How many people in here are developers okay, and how many people are co-development or outsourcing people? All right, thanks. Well, welcome to the panel. I mean, at the end, what's been happening, we've been watching this across the industry. There's been a big push now to start controlling cost. However, the consumer doesn't really care about cost. They just still want the quality. So the intention of this panel is what are we seeing for the best practices now for controlling cost, or even in a better situation, containing costs and lowering costs. We have a mixture of both publishers, outsourced co-development partners, and then Rima with AI. So Emma, can we start with you with doing the introductions?
Hello, everybody. I'm Emma Farrow. I'm the Chief Publishing Officer at Avalanche Studios Group based in Stockholm. We are a developer and publisher doing both self-published games and externally published games.
My turn, right? Hi, everyone. I'm Fatima Demina. I'm a business developer at Devoted Studios. It's a co-dev US-based studio. We also do production management. If you're looking for art, animation, tech art, development, reach out to me. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Carlos, head of business at Coco Games. We do co-development. We are located in Brazil and Lisbon now, we just opened there, and we do all kinds of co-development, from porting to full development. So, and happy to share some knowledge here and be with all of you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rima. I'm the founder of Begin AI. I have a long history with AI. And now we're working with gaming studios, helping them, identify opportunities for the usage for AI for making games more fun and interesting, as well as potentially more cost-efficient, if possible.
Hi everyone, my name is Fabienne Leine, and I work as a senior BD manager in the first-party BD team at a company called Xbox. You may have heard about it.
Okay, thanks you guys. I'm going to start with a pretty straightforward question. When you're developing a game right now, what do you guys consider the most significant video game production costs, and what are the key factors that have been driving those costs upward? Okay, Carlos, you're the first one to make eye contact.
Well, on our end, what we are seeing is in the development costs, engineering costs for sure are going super high those days because we have to have more senior people doing Unreal development or Unity, but sometimes and animation as well. We are seeing because some of those games now they have cutscenes or a lot of stuff happening in the game, and players expect the games to have this quality. So those are two of the main costs that we're seeing, in engineering and also animation.
Emma, so you saw you nodding your hand.
Yeah, I think even more high level, the major costs are the people costs. So they are the backbone of what we're building. They are the most important things resources that a company has, but they're also what drives the majority of the costs. So there's the technology, there's the marketing once you go to market, but really scaling up your team is what will push that to the next stage.
I would also like to add just a few words about art production. So art, everyone is looking for some additional content, props, buildings, characters. So we need to think about that as well.
I feel like gaming, like any other enterprises, always struggle with inefficient processes, especially when you scale a team, and especially in engineering. So engineering and tech is becoming more and more expensive, definitely, but a lot of it has to do with people using to do things the same way they've always done, or sort of, prioritizing comfort over, potential, which is understandable, because when you're squeezed for cost, you always go in a corner and you're like, I'm gonna do what I know how to do best. But typically that doesn't lead you to any competitive position. It just, squeeze you further and further backwards. So I think this is the time for strong leaders to, push forward instead of going backward in a defense, I believe.
That's a good point. I'm glad you got to that. Go ahead.
Well, I think a lot has been said already. Among the things that I've witnessed on the publisher side that raise the costs, I think it's, personnel, of course. There are a number of reasons, inflation, remote working, that even if you lose money on offices and whatnot, you actually raise the bar because everyone is now competing on a larger scene. So what used to be local or outside of big cities costs now become big cities costs because they can be hired anywhere. So that has been something. And I guess quickly, something that I witnessed a lot is that during COVID, money was about everywhere. And it was awesome. Like, we had a couple of good, fun years, studios, publishers alike. And that has led to a lot of companies growing their teams. And in some cases, maybe we'll come back to it, growing a bit too fast. And it's one thing to be late when you are 15 people. It's another thing to be late when you have 50 people in your team and on your payroll.
I'm going to start from the dev side right now as well. And this is actually Fabian's question. We're really interested in controlling cost. And how important is it for the developer or the development partner to speak to the publisher about what practices can they use to give to the publisher to say, this is what I'm going to do to help control costs? And how does it help them land a funding or publishing deal?
That's a good one. I will say that very often when studios come to us on the publishing side, they present a budget, and that's not exactly the only information we look for. I very much prefer to look at a game as a sum of staff months, because I think it gives a much more better understanding of the scope of what you're going for. And if you go to a publisher in Europe versus a publisher in North America with my, hey, $5 million budget or $10 million budget, it doesn't mean the same thing, because suddenly in the US you have a staff month rate cost around 20K or 18, whatever, and you can have 7, 12, 13, anything like that in Europe. So being precise about what you ask in terms of this is how many people I need, that's one thing. The second thing, a bit of to give comfort to the publishers, is to be upfront with the risks. Be upfront with the things you don't know about your game. And hey, in pre-production and in concept phase, we have all these questions that we need to answer. I love when I see a slide with risks and open questions, and I don't see it that often in pitches.
I feel like any founder-founder relationship, and I've been through this a lot, requires transparency. And we've had some awesome years where people were getting money without a lot of questions, and unfortunately, a lot of these relationships are starting to break down, or maybe fortunately, so a lot of these relationships are not working out too well, and there's no reason for. Lack of transparency is only going to lead one place, which is a delayed fight. If you're really lucky, you could delay it really long, but it doesn't. Eventually, you're going to hit it. So, in my experience, speaking about, like you said, the open questions and highlighting them, and what is in discovery, what is known, what is risk, and paying attention to discovery, I feel like that makes a huge difference in any of those relationships. Like, these are the things that we must discover to compete, and these are the the things we need to control to stay where we are. This is my take on it.
Yeah, just adding something quick here. I think one of the aspects is you should know like what you don't know, because like sometimes you say, okay, like it's going fine, and like until it doesn't, and then say, oh, but we never knew that we have to do this like certification with the platform or stuff like this. So it's important to really do the homework when we're pitching to publish or when we're pitching yourself, because you have to know, okay, I don't know this. I may have time to do it, or I may find another partner who does, but if you don't know what you're missing there, then the problems are huge. So that's what I feel is super important.
Yeah, I of course I agree with that, and you also need to focus on what you're looking for, and just to prepare what questions you may be asked, right? So you need to do your homework, you need to prepare for everything, and you need to maybe just note down the questions that you may be asked, in order not to be, you know, surprised and maybe shocked about what's going on next.
Yeah, so I've worked as third-party publishing. I now work with self-publishing, as well as our company pitches games for external publishing. So I've seen it from a lot of angles, and I think actually more important than the underlying cost is the expected return. And so if somebody is presenting a plan that has a reasonable scope for the cost, it has a really well-developed plan to scale up, it has a good and one that makes sense, kind of rationale for the business case, then I think that actually makes more of an impact to a publisher than what cost you're quoting them at the end of the day.
Yeah, those are good points. I mean, I can't stress that enough, is really have backup for when you're putting that staffing together. Also, with a lot of the cost control that's happening in the market now, some companies are more efficient than others. And if the funding group is sometimes expecting the budget to be 50 million and you suddenly come in at 30 million, they're going to be like, wait a second, how did this happen? And there are a variety of different things, everything from, we've moved from outsourcing to co-development, we've got great tools, and at the end of the day, I keep on going back to this thing, and these guys have heard me say it all the time, I don't really care about this new tool, I don't really care about AI, only thing I care about is how is it going to make the consumer experience that much better? Because all the consumer cares, they don't care how long it cost, how long it took, and how much it costs and how long it took. They just want to know their experience, and what are you doing to make sure the consumer has that great experience, which now brings us to AI. So this is always on the subject, how can AI, and this is the important thing, and we very specifically talked about the title, maintaining quality while controlling cost. So, and I really like to focus with AI. We all have these wonderful theoretical stories about how it's going to save time and money, but how is it going to just keep everything flat, but actually make the consumer experience that much more amazing? Because we have to keep on wowing the customer, or they'll just keep buying the same games and go back and play the old games again. Why don't we start with the AI expert?
I think, in my experience, the best way to approach AI projects is to not to think about like, how can I do what I already do a little better, but just to really start from a completely open mind. And because, like, if you're bored, if you're like, I'm just gonna try to be as good as, the best company in my category, then you're not thinking big enough. So I think you could possibly sometimes create with AI things that are completely new. And it's really interesting right now because, nobody, and I've talked to a lot of publishers and developers, and, nobody has tapped into the complete potential of AI. Everybody's just like trying to figure it out. And the bigger they are, the harder the time they have, because they have to, battle through big inefficiencies to just get the conversation going. So if you're a smaller, leaner team, you have a big opportunity to create something really huge now. And pay attention, I guess, going back to the cost element, like pay attention to people who say no repeatedly, and just kind of like, for example, a lot of developers, like a simple example, GitHub Copilot. It's available to everybody, you know, like if you're a coder, just like use it, for God's sake, it's there. I mean, it's like, you know, it'll make things much faster for you. It won't get it all the time right, but like it'll, you know, it'll make prototyping much faster. Or ChatGPT, everybody's using it now. Like things like that are available for everybody. You should use them. Like there's no reason not to. I mean, and so obviously I'm not talking about like, you know, art, copyright, ideas like that. I'm talking about like your existing process efficiencies. And that's a very good starting point. So once people start the conversation and start moving forward quickly, I think people start seeing opportunities quicker and engaging, you know, engage with people who work in AI and like talk to them, figure out like what could be possible instead of just like looking at, I have now an email that takes 3 seconds to go. I'm going to make it 2 seconds to go. That's not going to take you anywhere.
Someone want to jump in? Emma?
I'm a little out of my depths on this one, but
Okay.
I can share from the publishing side. And within Avalanche, I think every individual group is looking into what they can use AI for. Probably a little bit more on the efficiency side than you know, that massive exponential change. One thing that I've seen start to be really beneficial, though, from publishing is within user research. Being able to use some LLM model that we have, that you know our central technology team is helping support, to start parsing and categorizing a lot of the qualitative data that we're getting in that previously was done quite manually. So I think probably, again, more on the incremental change still than anything that we've seen be game-changing.
Okay, so on like our end, we see, of course, this as like a tool to make us more like productive, but not just like in art, because sometimes people just think about art. Oh, then it's like easier to do like the concept art and stuff. But there are several other like stuff that you can do. So that if you're doing like in the concept phase of the game, like a prototyping, you can use like some bots powered by AI to just test everything and like validate all of these things that you want to do. That would take like a month with a lot of people. Then you can easily do it. So. And you're not like killing the like creative side of it. We're just making, just like testing everything like faster. So that's one thing that we can use like AI to get to the final product or to the concept like faster. So that's one example of AI to reduce costs. You know.
Yeah, that's a good example, and that makes me think of another one I've seen in prototypes and pitch that is okay for publishers, at least, is for voiceover. Because voiceover, for example, and localization are things that we know can be done with just money, right? It's not a question really of talent. There is talent everywhere for voiceover and localization. If you have the money from the publisher, it will happen. So it's a good shortcut to take at the first place. What I think is a bad shortcut, and this can be controversial, but in my view, it's a bad shortcut to use AI-generated images in your pitches, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to use that in your game, right? Publisher contracts more and more are going to forbid that because we don't know what fed the AI, and we don't want any issues with licenses and lawsuits and all that, especially big companies, I know. So art, in my view, should be shied away from, but use it for anything that can be easily swapped, and you can easily convince people that you will swap it for human creations down the line.
Just one more time. You know, one of the things we're working on like right now is using your existing gameplay data. So like as players that are playing the game, we created like a language interface on top and a tracking system. So like tracks how people are playing the game, and then you can talk to that language model, say like, hey, how long is it taking people to go from here to here? Tell me how the most active user is playing differently from the least active user, and so on. So that adds, that is an optimization of analytics, but also makes analytics a lot more useful. It takes it like a huge step forward in the sense of like, well, now I can actually adapt the game, use AI to adapt this game to different segments. So like I can make it more accessible to someone. I can make someone who loves exploration a lot more than shooting, give them a lot more opportunities to explore. It could still be the same game, even if it's multiplayer and online, but you still have, you can still provide like a wider variety of opportunities for the players without investing so much in creating more, assets and more things. It's the same game, but you can actually use AI to optimize it and make it bigger and more interesting for a wider range of wider audience, essentially.
This is an interesting one, and we touched on it earlier, and this is from talking with a lot of big publishers and big developers. The amount of work that is just thrown out at the end of a production, I mean, it can be millions and millions and millions of dollars. And more importantly, it could add 1 month of a milestone. And 1 month of a milestone on a 20-month project towards the end, that could be 10% of the budget. So what are you guys seeing right? And it's funny because this has been a new thing with all the cost controls and things going now. They go, and I think Rima referred to it, strong leaders. Yeah. What are you guys doing, and what are you guys seeing right now on these projects right now? Of what tools and what processes are you implementing now to optimize development? Current development. We're not talking about tools. We're not talking. Well, tools are involved. I'm sorry. What are you guys seeing? What tools are you using? What processes? What are you guys doing now to actually become more efficient with your current development?
Yeah, we've started approaching how we make games in a really different way. I think we probably had a history of starting quite big. And first, we're known for our big open worlds. So we started with the world, and then we built the cool things that lived within it. And I think what has been very apparent of late is that you really need to start with the core, start with finding the fun. Yep. And testing the hell out of it. So every 3 to 4 months, we're getting users playing our builds and validating that we are building the kind of game that they want to be playing. Because at the end of the day, Jeff, to your point, we're building for our players. We're not building for our boardroom. We want to make great experiences for our players. And so the first step is truly understanding who that player base is, who they are, what their motivations are, what the competitors are doing in the space, and then ensuring that at every step of the way, you're continuing to cater to them and their needs. So that continuous testing cycle, ensuring that we're only scaling up once we've really validated let's say in the first stage, the fun, and pre-production, only scaling up when we've got a really strong development plan that makes a lot of sense. We're not adding 100 people overnight. And then in production, really that's where the major costs come in. And so that is a very key check-in point, that and pre-production, because it's not that expensive to have 5 people prototyping a game. Where it's really expensive is moving into building out the pipelines, getting into production. And so those are the huge check-in points now that we have where we're making sure that the investment makes sense for the scope of the game and for the players.
I would like to focus on planning, to be honest, because...
Oh yeah, there's that.
Yeah, so planning is like the key factor here. I know it may seem like some boring stuff. You need to sit down, just plan everything, your milestone, funding, timelines. I know. But it can save you like tons of money. You just need to sit down, take some notes, understand your main business goal, and just have maybe some, boards, mood boards, and just to plan everything. It will save you so much money, so much time, and that's the key here.
Yeah, I guess like VCs, when they came into gaming, they were coming from like tech, where there's like everything is sprint-based, iterative, move fast, break things, and came into the world where everything's like waterfall still and like super pre-planned, and you build stuff and then you're like, oh, that's not pretty enough, let me throw it away. But I love what Emma said about like stay lean, stay focused, and just like try to sort of quickly iterate and through testing, through even if you can have like a small launch. I think that's what made, you know, like funding something that iterates fast is more palatable than and funding something that is not in motion, because things that stay still struggle a lot, because they struggle through like changes of pricing, changes of ideas, changes of mentality, changes of consumer demand. And you can't really like fight through all of these changes while you're sitting still on the same plan, right? So.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. Very good points that I've seen in successful studios, and I guess pitfalls that I've seen in studios that have struggled. Just coming back maybe to the planning, plan your game as if you were going to stay small as long as possible is an advice that I give often. It's tempting to grow the team, it's tempting to put more things on screen, right? You want to see your build come to life, you want to see finer animations, but if you can resist, you hire the people that you want to hire and just keep more runway and be late or have more planning phase at a lower amount of people. Again, it will pay in the long run.
Yeah, and this was actually a question that I think Fabian put in there. One of the things that's becoming more and more accepted in a lot of the big funding groups, including publishers, especially publishers, but the VCs now are getting more educated on game development. Especially from the VCs, it's really funny you said that. They didn't like seeing these long concept phase and these kind of nebulous pre-production phases. Like, I don't know, pre-production might be 3 months, might be 12 months. Like, I'm like, well, 3 months, it's never 3, it should be at least 6. But if you really want to save money on production, and probably everyone here can say it, is like, have a long pre-production. And because you might only have 10 or 15 people, and if you have to add a month at 10 or 15 people, it only costs 10 or 15 people. When you're at 100 people, or you're at 20 people, or you're at 30 people, it just costs 3, 10, 12 times more per month. So that's number one, that's really important. And if you want to expand on this, like when Microsoft, when you see pitches, and oh yeah, by the way, I also understand when you're an independent developer and you're like, well, I have 30 people here, I might as well have them do something. Don't. Have them work on something else, because everything that they do then takes the team that needs to integrate instead of iterating. So just that's one thing to think about. And I know it's something, have them work on a second project or do something, but don't just all of a sudden dump them on because they don't have anything to do, because all of a sudden you got assets everywhere.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Jeff said.
Yeah.
Think like the metaphor that has been overused, but it's a good one. The game development is a kitchen, and you cannot have too many cooks at the start in the kitchen, or you can just bump in elbows and throw pans on the ground and whatever. So yeah, when you have 30 people, put 15 on the main game, the main idea that you have. Try to book the 15 either with codev elsewhere, have them jamming on another project if you have the founds. Hopefully you don't have to come to tough decisions, as we call them these days, but it can be an option. And try to really stay as lean as you can. That's.
Okay. Who makes original IPs? Okay. Pretty soon we're going to be getting in pre-production. So we keep on talking about it, and we danced around this too. How do you balance now the pressure from your marketing departments, from what you're trying to pitch, trying to put everything in a pitch, everything from the publishing part of this, where our people are demanding more and more features, people are demanding more and more things from the game, people are demanding more and more fidelity, but you guys have to still make a time frame-ish, and you really have a target budget. What are some of the best things doing right now that you guys think? How do you manage that process?
Okay, so we are currently now doing a game that we are going to do like live ops for at DLCs, and so which is, I guess, fits in this case, because we could do basically like anything. Okay, let's do like a $20 or like a €20 pack, or like 5. So for us, we did a lot of market like studies. So we checked like what the players were like playing in the previous game, so that we can, when we start like developing this, we know that this is going to sell well. Or so for us, it's super important to really do this research about what are we going to build like in the live ops process, if it's an outfit, if it's a weapon or stuff like this. Because if you just start like creating content, then you could end up doing like a lot of things that people are like not buying, and in the end, it's like a waste of like money and like production time. So that's.
Yeah, I think whether you're in live and you're continuing to, live service, continuing to, whether you're launching DLCs or you're pushing server updates, or whether you're in development, the answer is the same, which is understand what your players care about, and you need to prioritize that above all. So, we have market research, we have player insights, we have user research, we have telemetry and data analysis, and ideally, you have data points from all of those that you can kind of triangulate. But you're going to want to do everything. Budget does not allow that. So what you need to do is that you prioritize the elements or the features or the type of gameplay that's going to be most engaging, is going to ensure that your user base, your players, your community are passionate about the game. You are going to want to invest more into that than whatever ancillary things they haven't proven to care about. So it's really just about balancing where the money's going most efficiently.
That's a good point. I think being data-driven is now more crucial than ever before. Like in the past, you could just trust your gut feeling because there was just so much money, and you could be wrong 50% of the time. But now, I'm not underestimating like the vast experience you could build and have amazing smart gut feelings that can drive you through. But since you have a lot of departments, a lot of players, geographies, etc., you got to rely on data. But what's really interesting is, as I'm meeting with many different studios and learning about the underhoods, I'm seeing that a lot of companies have terrible data. And the issue with that is you're essentially looking through very dirty glasses. And it could be misleading. It could cause it could cause you to be wrong 70% or 50% of the time. Who knows, right? So I think investing, and it may seem like a big investment to invest in the data infrastructure.
Yep.
But there are tools out there. There are ways. There are consultants. They may or may not be in the gaming industry. There are ways to fix the data, underlying data, and I think that could go a very long way in balancing and understanding the market forces.
You guys pretty much addressed this, but my last question, because I want to make sure we have time with the audience with a big panel. What are the common pitfalls and challenges that game developers encounter? And we sort of addressed the last part with the analytics and set. And how can these challenges and pitfalls be mitigated and overcome? So let's start with the biggest pitfalls. We never really talked about the biggest pitfalls.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very much in the same theme of what we talked about, but I was actually just part of a mentoring group right before this panel, and I was speaking with somebody who was a 4-person team, and she wants to grow to 6 to 8 people this year. And so I was asking about, where she is, where the life cycle of the game is, et cetera, and where the, strategy was. And, I think going back to some of the earlier takeaways here, there was no long-term strategy set. There were no yearly goals set. Every individual kind of had a role that was half this, half that, and everybody was kind of overlapping. And she wanted to add more people. And so I think the really important piece is that you need clarity on where you're trying to go. You need to identify, are you, addressing this in certain areas? You have gaps in other areas. What are those gaps? And make sure that you're looking to address those either through external resources or hiring very specific things. But just going in without a plan because you think you need to scale, it doesn't really work very well, and it's actually where I've seen a lot of smaller developers and even bigger developers fall down either at the company level or at a project level.
I'd like to say that you need to stay focused on all the time.
Yeah.
You need to understand what your goal is, because during your way, you will be distracted by so many things, and you just need to keep being on the same way towards your goal and understand what you're looking for, and especially what players are looking for. And I would like to talk about Genshin Impact. So I have been playing Genshin Impact, and I love that they have, this little questionnaires after every release. So, and I'm so fond of just like filling it in, because I'm so happy that they care about my voice, about my opinion. So you need to gain these insights, and especially I think that's a great example. You need to play other games and see what they try to do. For example, like Genshin Impact. That's a great thing to do. Just ask your audience what they are looking for.
Yeah, on our end, I think one of the key things, the pitfalls, is what's the idle ratio that you want to have in your studio. In our case, because from the CFO side, he said, okay, let's have everybody booked for the whole year. But then, what if something else happens? Then we have to grow some team, and then we don't have people. We have to hire more people. So for us, this is tricky. So we of course don't want to have a lot of people idle, but we need them because we may need to ramp up another project fast, and it's not easy to just hire senior people or the talent onboard them internally. So that's always something that we are okay. What's the best idle ratio that we should have internally?
Okay.
I guess here's one that's I think everybody talks about, but not everybody implements. Is kind of mental health of people. I think we talked about this yesterday a little bit in Executive Summit, and there's still an instinct to say if someone works really hard, they're going to be productive forever. It's not linear. People burn out, and what I try to do is to hire people people who are super I'm the what you might call in slang the hungry person who will work for a super long sprint and then burn out. I'm one of those. And then you have the people who have a more steady motion, kind of I work this amount of hours and I have a more balanced life, And I think there's place for both in almost every team. And I think it's necessary to kind of understand the mental balance of the team, and that's something that took me maybe 15 years to learn. Understanding the mental balance of the team pays off immediately and in the long term, and it helps understanding, helps prevent one key business metric from a key business error from happening, which is building over bad assumptions. Because when we build a plan and we say this is what's going to happen, and usually, here's how it goes usually the people who are building the plan say, well, here's 10 things I have no clue what they are, so I'm just going to throw some resources on them. Hopefully they get figured out. And then when you go pitch that plan to the next person who unlocks the potential funding, they'll ask you questions about this, and then you're I better look confident, so I'm just gonna say I'm 100% sure about this. And then you're you explain it that this is it, this is how it works, but you actually don't know. And then you build a ladder of that, over defending something that in the beginning nobody was sure about. And you end up hiring a lot of people to work on something that nobody knows what it is. and then later you have burnout, and you have people who are going mad in your house, and then sadly they turn into your bad apples, which turn into a smelly department that then you're well, oops, what do I do now? So inventing jobs for people to keep them working is not a good idea. And if you know something from the beginning is unknown, maintain that knowledge that it's unknown, and tell someone who is one of those steady people that this is unknown. They will continue to remind you while you're trying to invent work for others, essentially. So
that's an interesting point.
Yeah,
and then right after this, we're going to ask questions.
Yeah, very quickly. Just to pick maybe a pitfall that I've seen a couple of times in pitches and then in development phases is to forget why excited you in the first place when you started the project. It comes to the focus point that Fatima made that I think is very good. You start with a great idea and then you add stuff to it. It's inevitable, it's the imagination, nature of the imagination, I guess, for all human beings. And you think it's gonna be cool, so you start with an exploration game and then you're like, hey, it would be cool to have some combat and it would be cool to have some puzzles. And then when you pitch, I see people like saying, hey, it's gonna have the puzzles a bit like Cocoon, and it's gonna have the combat a bit like Dead Cells, and it's gonna have the emotional impact of a bit like Journey. And I'm like, well, all of the 3 games you just mentioned were great at one thing, and it took a ton of efforts to be great at that one thing. So don't try to put all 3 ingredients into your game and think that you're gonna get there. It's better to focus. Find a core fun, find the kernel during your concept phase, we were talking about that a bit earlier, and stick to it. It's better to excel at one thing in a game and add whatever you want in live ops once you're successful in running, rather than trying to add too much during the production phase.
I think it's called the oh shit moment in Latin.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the oh shit moments. So we want to open the floor to some questions. Does anyone want to start? We have a microphone we're going to have to send out to people. Right there. Good shirt for getting called first, by the way.
Thank you for the conversation. So you mentioned using outsourcing partners or co-dev partners to support the process, but sometimes, you know, the evaluation can be hard of how can the partner deliver what has been requested and what they have promised. So what are your tips in ensuring that both sides are meeting expectations?
Huh.
Thank you for the question. I love that.
Says the outsourcer. Go on.
So I think trust is what should be built. And of course, it takes so much time to gain trust, to build trust between a partner and outsourcing company. That's what you need to look for. So you need to check the portfolios, of course. You need to check the background. You need to maybe ask other companies whether they had great experience with this outsourcing partner. And of course, you need to not just email this outsourcing company, but also to have a call with them to see people and to understand their message, what they're looking for, and what they will tell you about their company. I think that pitch and in-person conversation, I mean remotely, but in person maybe if you're in same city, is very important. So you will see this person, and I think that it may initially build trust with this outsourcing company.
Yeah, just to add to that, because I do a lot of codev as well as part of my job, and I completely agree that trust is primordial. I would say very quickly, start also by defining your key goals for, let's say, a year. Like you want to do a year of codev. Okay, great. What do you want outside of that year? You start with a super high level goal and then you cut it down and cut it down and cut it down. And you don't need to start from the start with like 12 monthly milestones that are super detailed. It's fine to leave room for adaptation, but you should have a mutual understanding at the start of, hey, this is what we want after 3 months, after 6, after 9, after 12. That's one thing. And the second thing is travel. Book time, book money for travel and actually meeting the people. If you don't meet your codev partners, you're going to have subpar results, I believe. And I often recommend split the budget. The client and the codev partners should pay for 50% of the travels and go one way, go the other.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Makes sense. Do you have another question, or could anyone else have another question? Right over there. And then we'll probably have time for one more, maybe two, okay?
So you talked about using tools and AI and whatnot in terms of improving efficiency and not having too many employees just working on stuff because employees are expensive. How does neurotypical people fit into this? Because neurotypical people have their own very specialized sets of skills that they can be very, very good at. But I don't tend to hear a lot about how they fit into the games industry, like in general.
I'm not sure I understand. Okay.
Neurotypical or neurodivergent? Also, I mean, do you mean like people with autism and ADHD and that kind of stuff? Well, I'm on autism spectrum, and I feel like I fit perfectly. The sorry, that was. But I mean, honestly, like, try to figure out. If the question is management, I guess is if try to be as flexible as possible. Like we have flexible hours, we have flexible sort of vacations, we have remote work environments and social events. We have pick your own adventure style of work. So here are the things that need to get done. I personally try to keep reminding people in every meeting what we're trying to achieve. So everybody's on the same page all the time. Tools are not to replace people. Actually, they can create a lot of opportunities. So I don't want to take all the time for the next question.
Yeah, I mean,
hope I'm
that's important with tools. Everyone thought like, oh, Maya's going to cut all these jobs. Unreal's going to cut all these jobs. Opposite happened. Once they saw what could be done, it actually created jobs. And then this will be the last question right here.
Oh, we are like on a time budget.
Oh, we're out of time?
Yeah.
Kidding. Just kidding.
So sorry.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope that you all had a great talk and felt secure and everything here on stage. And we will be back in 15 minutes, everybody. So see you then.
And I just want to say, is this still on? I want to say one thank you, especially to the two publishers up here.
Yeah.
You start with a waterfall of identifying people, and as soon as people found out, wait, could AI come up? The number of publishers that said, I can't be on the panel, just ran. So special thanks to the two publishers.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.